Hello, welcome to our workshop on this lovely Thursday. Hopefully, you are having a good day, and hopefully, you're having a good week. We are going to do our workshop today. It is called Recovery in Quarantine. We thought it would be a great idea to discuss just substance issues, dependency during quarantine. We know a lot of students are dealing with this, and so we thought it would be a great idea to address this in a workshop. My name is Markelse Jordan. I am a licensed professional counselor, and I work here at UTD in the Student Counseling Center. I've been here for a little bit over a year, and so this year has been great that I've been working here. They haven't got rid of me yet, so I'm assuming that I'm doing an okay job. But everything we've been doing has been virtual, including our workshop. So hopefully this will be a great experience for you too. But before we get started, I did want to go over that in the side of your screen, there's a question and answer column. So if you have any questions during this presentation, you can definitely write in your question. And so if I see it pop up, I might stop the presentation, kind of like a real life PowerPoint presentation. I might stop and kind of ask the question and answer it for the audience. Or if not, I might just wait to the end. It depends on the question at the time. Also, in the announcement portion of the question and answer, the announcement that our moderator Stacy had put that we are recording this. This is live, and it will be recorded and put on our YouTube page later. So for those who, if you're in here and you kind of want to refer back, this will be recorded and put on our Student Counseling Center YouTube page. Uh, as well, if you know someone who you think could benefit from this, you definitely can let them know that it will be recorded and put on our YouTube page. But all the questions that people send in, anything like that, it will be anonymous. I won't post. I won't post or say this question is from such and such. Also, the question and answer portion won't be recorded. As far as like the name of the person and the question won't be recorded. Just me talking about the question, if that makes sense, won't be recorded. Okay. So again, we're going to jump right into this. It should last maybe 30 minutes or so, 30, 40 minutes. Uh, and so, or maybe a little longer, but we designated at least an hour to do this presentation. So again, so today we're going to talk about the recovery process while being quarantined, isolated during this COVID-19 pandemic. So the learning plan for today is understanding the recovery process, right? So I know a lot of times people say, "Oh, this person's in recovery," or "I'm in recovery," and so many people don't know what that means, or they may have one definition of what recovery means. So today we're just going to talk about the recovery process. Uh, we're going to address COVID-19 and its impact on those in recovery, right? And so recovery is definitely a process, and then when you throw in COVID-19 and the pandemic and these situations surrounding the pandemic, it definitely impacts those who are in recovery in their process. We're going to talk about the importance of managing your mental health during this time. Mental health, clearly, I'm a counselor, so mental health is important. And so definitely managing your mental health while in recovery is something that is definitely important. I'm going to talk about strategies during recovery, right? So if a person is in the recovery process, what are some strategies? What are some coping skills that this person can kind of tap into to help them during their process? And I'm going to talk about the importance of support. So a little bit before we go to the next slide, a little bit about me. Before I worked for UTD, I worked for 7 years working with those who did kind of have challenges with substance misuse and chemical dependency. I did that for 7 years, and so talking about this and addressing this is one of my passions. And so if you see me kind of excited about talking about it, that's why. Uh, it's one of the things that I feel people should have a lot of education on, and those who are dealing with these challenges should have a lot of grace and mercy towards. So, just a little bit about if you see me get excited, this is why it's one of my passion areas. Okay, next slide, please. So what is recovery, right? Again, people use that term very like loosely or they throw it out here and there. So what is recovery? So recovery is a process. So let's pause and let this sink in, right? Recovery isn't an overnight journey. It isn't a one day I'm in recovery and then bam, everything is fine, everything is perfect. Recovery is a process. It looks different for everyone, right? And so how I do recovery may be different how the person down the street does recovery, right? And I know a lot of people, think recovery should look one way, should be this one journey, and people they differ in that opinion. Uh, from my experience working with individuals who struggle with challenges with chemical dependency, uh, it's different for everyone. The recovery process is different for everyone. And I also do want to mention that although we're talking more about chemical dependency today, the recovery process from any dependency, any addiction, uh, you know, looks the same, right? Whether it's uh, I'm trying to recover or I'm trying to recover from porn addiction, I'm trying to recover from the sex addiction or sex dependency. So even though we're talking more about chemical dependency, a lot of these strategies, a lot of this conversation also could be used for other addictions. So I just want to put that out there. So again, the recovery process, it is a process and it looks different for everyone. Right here, a quote says, recovery from addiction is the process of sustaining abstinence and learning and practicing the awareness and skills necessary to live a whole, healthy, healed life, right? And so there's some key things I want to point out with this quote. It says recovery from addiction is the process. Again, process. That means there's a system to it. It's not an overnight thing. It's a process of sustaining abstinence and learning and practicing. Keywords, learning and practicing. So the learning and practicing part is part of the process, right? Many times individuals that start the recovery process, right? I want to stop drinking, or I want to stop gaining so much, or I want to stop I want to stop smoking cigarettes. They want to stop cold turkey, and they wanted to just be better overnight. But again, in this definition, it says learning and practicing the awareness and skills, right, necessary to live a whole, healthy, healed life. So there has to be some learning and practicing involved when you talk about recovery, when you talk about doing this process. Again, it's not a one-stop overnight thing, but it's learning and practicing. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, or we call it SAMHSA, states that recovery, includes a process that involves change. Okay, it involves change in which individuals improve their overall health and wellness and live a self-directed life and strive to reach their full potential. So I know that's a whole mouthful. So let's break that down. And so one of the key things I want to pinpoint in this is that recovery includes a process that involves change. So, and we'll get deeper into this whole change thing and process, but it involves some type of change, right? So if I'm in recovery, if I'm trying to uh, do better with my dependency, it has to involve some type of change, right? And it has to be a change that improves my overall health and wellness, and that helps me live a self-directed life and strive for me to reach my full potential, right? So if I'm in recovery and I'm doing this process, it has to involve some type of change. Okay, next slide. This this slide right here talks about recovery is a gradual process for many, a process that requires patience and persistence. Again, Keyword patient, keyword persistence, right? I remember working with individuals and they would get frustrated with the process, right? Anytime there's a process to anything, going to college is a process, right? You don't start your freshman year and graduate in 2 months, right? Going to college, getting a degree, whether it's your undergrad, your master's, your doctoral, whatever, it's a process that requires patience and persistence. And that's no difference from those who are in recovery, right? If I know I have a dependency on alcohol and I want to just get better, I want to stop drinking, I have to know that it requires some type of patience and persistence, right? And some clients that I've worked with in the past, that's kind of where they get weary, right? Like, listen, me drinking, me smoking has impacted my life in negative ways. It has impaired me. Therefore, I just want it to be over quickly, right? I just want to wake up and a week later, I want to be able to say, I don't smoke no more, I don't drink anymore. And so I have to remind people that it requires patience and persistence. And it's a gradual process. Gradual, meaning like it takes time, there's steps to this thing. And so I have to kind of hammer that into people, especially when they start being weary and want to give up the process, that, hey, you have to have patience and you have to have persistence. Uh, this gradual process for many individuals involves reducing use. So I really want to talk about this. So for some people, when they hear recovery, they hear abstinence, right? Kind of what we talked about with the last slide. Like, hey, if I'm in recovery, that means I'm not using, I'm not smoking. So let's say marijuana. I'm not smoking marijuana, right? If I'm in recovery, that means I'm not using, I'm not smoking. It's like what? Cold turkey, it's done. And for some people, that is part of their process, but other people it's not, right? It's a gradual process to get to that abstinence, if that's the goal. So a lot of times their recovery process means I'm just going to reduce my use. If so, for example, if you are used to drinking 16 Dr. Peppers a week, and you've been doing that for 5 years, it's unrealistic to think. Now, granted, some people can do a cold turkey. I'm not saying some people can't, but for many people, it's unrealistic to think that I'm just gonna stop. Right? I'm just gonna stop drinking Dr. Pepper. I've been doing this for 5 years, and so I tell people it's about, hey, what are you willing to reduce, right? If you feel like abstinence is not what you are looking for right now, and I just want to quit drinking Dr. Pepper, I know I just can't do that. That's too much of an expectation for me. I talk about, okay, where do you want to meet me at? What do you think is healthy for you? What do you think you're willing to do? You know what? I can go from drinking 16 Dr. Peppers to maybe 10 Dr. Peppers a week, right? Okay, cool. That's progress. I'm all about celebrating even those quote unquote what we call small victories, right? And so a lot of people, again, abstinence is not the first thing they go towards, excuse me, in the recovery process. It's about how can I gradually reduce my use. So if I smoke 16 joints a week, maybe going down to 11 joints a week. It's progress for me, right? That's part of my process. That's part of my recovery process. It's gradual reducing my use, right? And so, in the world of chemical dependency, you have a lot of people who kind of differ in that opinion, right? But personally, I'm all about meeting people where they are, right? So if you feel like you just can't stop smoking marijuana, this is too much of a task for you, cool. Let's talk about how can we reduce your use. What are you comfortable with, right? And I feel like when I collaborate with the client, when I collaborate with somebody, say, listen, if you only can do, if you go from 16 joints to 11 joints and you feel that is comfortable for you, hey, let's start there. And if you do well with that in the next month, we might go from 11 to 8, right? Again, part of my recovery process is reducing the use. So I wanted to put that because some people feel like if I just can't quit, you know, quit the chemical, if I just can't quit watching the porn, if I just can't stop, quit, if I just can't stop it off the bat, then what's the point, right? They kind of like, you know what? They feel discouraged. They feel like if I just can't stop myself, I don't want to even start the process. So I try to tell people it's a gradual process. Let's talk about where you're comfortable starting with, and talk about how can we reduce that use. Many individuals in the recovery process, uh, they're influenced and tailored by particular situations, right? So many individuals' recovery process is influenced and tailored by their particular situation and circumstance. So depending on where they live and who they're around, it's kind of hard for them to stop using, right? So especially around this whole pandemic, if I'm sheltered at home and I'm trying to stop smoking nicotine, but I'm back home with my father, with my mom, with my siblings who smoke cigarettes. It's like I just can't stop smoking, right? It's all around me. My parents smoke at the kitchen table, my siblings smoke, my girlfriend smoke. So their recovery process and how they reduce their use has to be tailored to that particular situation, if that makes sense, right? And so, hey, depending on your situation and your circumstance, let's tailor your recovery process to that. And for those, and I'm not going to get too deep into this, but to those who drink alcohol very heavily, or do any type of like pain pills or opiates, sometimes they just can't stop using because it becomes a health issue, right? Uh, and we don't want individuals going into withdrawal, and we don't want individuals to get sick. And so sometimes their recovery process has to be tailored around which particular chemical they're using, right? So a lot of times that's when they have to go to treatment and get nurses and doctors involved because they just can't stop taking a particular chemical because it could make them sick, go in withdrawal, and cause serious medical problems. So their recovery process again has to be tailored to their particular situation and circumstance. Okay, next slide. So let's talk about this whole COVID-19 and recovery, right? So if you are in a recovery process, uh, you know, in recovery, it's difficult, right? I'm trying to manage the whole process of, my mental health, my emotional health, and just not using in general. But then the pandemic, this whole COVID-19 has kind of added some challenges to that, right? So COVID-19, as we know, impacts our mental, emotional, and physical health. I'm sure ever since March, it's been all over the news. And so I'm sure a lot of y'all know that it does impact our mental, emotional, and physical health. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or we call it the CDC, report that pandemics are stressful. We know that we're living in it. So if you don't know by now, pandemics are stressful. And with overwhelming stress, right, comes other challenges that impact everyday living. So, right. And so we know without COVID, life can be stressful. That's kind of how life is. And then we add in a pandemic, here comes this overwhelming stress, right? Because it's something that's affecting us more than our everyday stressors. This pandemic causes us overwhelming stress, right? And so with this overwhelming stress in COVID, we have to look at kind of how COVID-19 has impacted people's everyday living. So these challenges include, right, fear and worry. A lot of individuals, a lot of students watching this, a lot of students, family and parents are having a lot of fear and worry around COVID. Changes in sleeping and eating patterns, right? And so how we eat, how we sleep, some of those patterns have been changed because of this pandemic. Difficulty sleeping and concentrating, right? I hear a lot of students say, hey, I can't sleep because I'm so anxious, or I can't sleep because of the pandemic and how it has my parents worrying. So that makes me worry. My concentration has been off, right? A lot of students are taking classes over the summer, and because of watching the news every day and getting all these news alerts on your phone, my concentration has been kind of off. worsening chronic health problems. And we kind of know with this particular pandemic, we know that it can cause underlying conditions and other health problems to kind of worsen, right? So we know that from watching the news and all that. Worsening mental health problems, right? So if I deal with mental health already, if I'm already having some challenges, this pandemic can kind of worsen those problems. If I'm already dealing with anxiety, if I'm already dealing with depression, right? This pandemic can definitely add to those mental health challenges and excuse me, make them worse. And these challenges of the pandemic can increase or continue the use of substances, right? So some individuals, maybe haven't been smoking or drinking before the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, they picked up this use of substances. And for other people who may be in the recovery process, right, it's like it has continued and increased my use, right? So if I was drinking 5 times a week, now I'm drinking 10 times a week, right? The whole stress of the pandemic has impacted my recovery process, and I was working on limiting my use, or maybe I was abstinence from drinking or smoking, but because of the pandemic and the stress, I now have increased or picked back up my substance use or misuse. Next slide. So, again, talking about COVID-19 and recovery, as if these challenges, right, all the challenges I just mentioned, right, as if these challenges during this pandemic wasn't enough, here they come talking about shelter in place, right? And to be honest, I have never heard of shelter in place or that term before. I think I'm 36. I think just in my knowledge, this is the first time that I can think of in my lifetime that I think I had to shelter in place, right? And so again, shelter in place was a new concept to many people, and it adds another element that many individuals were not used to, right? Having to shelter in place and social distance creates isolation, which produces for many loneliness, boredom, anxiety, and depression, right? And so it's like, hey, I was already, dealing with some things, or I was managing my anxiety, I was managing my depression, okay. But of course, sheltering in place kind of increases that or produces more of that. Uh, Mental, emotional, and physical challenges added with isolation can make the recovery process complex and difficult, right? And so, again, I'm already dealing with maybe mental and emotional and physical challenges because of the pandemic, and now I have to do it in isolation, right? So it's layer after layer. I'm dealing with my own mental health, my own emotional well-being, and maybe some physical challenges because of the pandemic. And then you add the whole shelter in place, don't go anywhere, stay away from friends, don't go out, and then of course if I'm already in recovery and I'm in this recovery process, that makes it way more difficult and complex. Uh, Many individuals in recovery work hard on establishing and engaging in healthy coping skills, right? However, with these unique challenges presented by the pandemic, individuals are in jeopardy of resulting back to unhealthy habits, right? So if I'm in recovery from, let's say, smoking marijuana. If I'm in recovery from that and I'm working hard on other healthy coping skills, right? So, hey, I'm not smoking, but I'm journaling more. Instead of smoking when I'm stressed, I'm learning to meditate. I'm doing these other coping skills. But bam, here comes the pandemic. And with the pandemic, I lose my job. With the pandemic, my parents may lose their job. With the pandemic, I'm more depressed now because I'm by myself. So I was having healthy coping skills during my recovery process and learning other ways to manage my stress instead of smoking. But because of all these external factors that I can't control, now I feel like, no, what the heck? I want to smoke, right? I'm stressed, and so many people during this pandemic are kind of wrestling with wrestling with that thing of not going back to these unhealthy habits, right? Whether it's smoking, drinking, again, watching excessive porn, excessive sex, just because again I'm bored, I'm isolated, I'm anxious, and I'm struggling with not going back to those unhealthy habits. Okay, next slide, please. So with all this going on, right, I'm trying to manage my recovery process. I'm trying to manage COVID and the pandemic. Bam, mental health, right? Mental health management. And of course, I'm a counselor, so clearly I'm going to really highlight this section uh, of the PowerPoint. So mental health, again, I never want to assume people know what I mean when I say mental health, right? Mental health refers to the state of our emotional, psychological, and social makeup, right? It is the interrelated thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that influence our life choices, experiences, and the way we handle stress. It also sets the stage. I love that part. It sets the stage on how we connect in and connect to relationships, right? So let's break some of that down. Uh, because clearly, I work at UTD. Clearly, there's a lot of diverse students from different cultures, different backgrounds, different neighborhoods, different religions. And so what I hear a lot of students say is that I didn't want to come to therapy because from where I'm from my family, my culture, mental health isn't a thing, right? It's not a concept. And so I always have to tell them, like, mental health refers to the state of our emotional, psychological, and social makeup, right? We all have an emotional aspect to us. We all have a psychological aspect to us in our social makeup, right? When we talk about relationships and how we move in the world and how we connect to people, that's part of mental health, right? And so I know when we say mental health, people think, oh my gosh, I'm crazy and all this stigma stuff. But no, let's break it apart. It's the state of our emotional and our psychological and our social makeup. We all have that. Again, it is the interrelated thoughts, feelings, and the behaviors, right? We all have that, right? We all have thoughts. We all have feelings and behaviors that influence our life choices and our life experiences and determines how we handle stress. So I always want to break that down to people that mental health is a state of being, right? And we all have that state of being. And it definitely, again, sets the stage on how we connect into relationships, right? If we aren't managing our emotional, our psychological, our social aspect very well, it influences how we connect with relationships, whether that's intimate, whether that's with our parents, our siblings, how we connect with coworkers, right? All that matters. Uh, all that matters when we talk about mental health. Mental health is definitely a spectrum, right? And so again, I always want to educate people on mental health being a spectrum. So we have this big spectrum, right? And just like physical health, we all have a physical health, right? So let's think about physical health for a minute. Here's a spectrum of physical health. I'm sorry, it's like you can see this big my spectrum. It's probably off camera, but on this side of the spectrum, you have a headache. You have a common cold, stuff that we all deal with. I have an upset stomach. That's on the low end of the spectrum of our physical health. Then you get to the extreme part or the other part of the spectrum of physical health where you have people who have chronic health conditions, right? Whether it's diabetes, whether it's cancer, whether it's some type of bone disease. Those are more chronic physical conditions, right? Again, physical health is a spectrum, and we all land somewhere on that spectrum because we all have physical health. Same thing with mental health. It's a spectrum, right? We all get sad. Being sad is a part of the human condition. We all get angry. Anger is part of the human condition. We all have anxiety on some level here and there. That's part of the human condition. That's on this part of the spectrum. But some people have, again, more situational, more specific, more chronic mental health conditions where it's like ongoing depression, right? Ongoing anxiety, ongoing anger, ongoing stuff, right? Where it may be on the other end of the spectrum. So mental health is a spectrum, and again, we all land somewhere on that spectrum. Recognizing where you are on this spectrum is important, right? Like you have to know that you land somewhere on the spectrum, and you have to know where, right? And being self-aware, and some people aren't self-aware, and that's okay. But the important part is working toward that self-awareness to know that I'm somewhere on the spectrum, and when I can identify where I am, I can know kind of what help and what ways I can manage where I am. uh, those in the recovery process have to really focus on and manage their mental health, because many times it is connected to their dependency, right? So I always try to let clients know, like, hey, if you're in recovery, if you're working on your drinking, if you're working on your smoking, if you're working on whether it's porn addiction, porn dependency, if you're working on something and you're in a recovery process, you have to work on your mental health, because the two are so connected. Meaning this: if I'm not managing my depression well, if I'm not managing my anxiety well, I want to go back to how I can cope with that. How do I manage that? And so if I'm going to manage it in an unhealthy way, I might start back drinking more, or drinking again if I have been abstinent from drinking, right? I might start smoking again, and let's say it's been 3 months since I picked up a pack of cigarettes, but because I'm not managing my anxiety, or I'm not managing my grief very well, I kind of go back into those coping skills that are unhealthy for me, and that will kind of impair or impact, I should say, my recovery process. So it's important for those who are in recovery, working hard on whether you're abstinent and you're working hard on staying that way, or even if you're working on the gradual reduction of use. Managing your mental health is important, because when that's not managed well, it impacts the recovery process. Okay, next slide, please. So let's talk about strategies, right? So if you're looking at this, I know the wording is really little, so please forgive me. It's a lot I put on this particular slide. But strategies, right? So again, if I am in the recovery process, and I'm trying to work on staying abstinence or reducing my use, and I'm trying to manage my mental health with COVID and with the pandemic, and doing school virtually, that's stressful. Like, how it's a lot going on, right? So what are some strategies, some coping skills? So in the recovery process, having coping strategies is important to continue in the process, right? If I want to continue this journey, continue this process, it's it's good to have some coping strategies. It's kind of what I call a toolbox, right? It's like my coping toolbox. I gotta have some tools in my toolbox if I want to continue this process of recovery. Coping strategies are particular techniques that people use to deal with mental and emotional challenges. There are tons of positive, healthy coping strategies, and most can be classified into three categories, right? Cognitive, behavioral, and emotional. And so many of these intersect. So, we're going to get more detail about that. But again, coping strategies, again, are just particular techniques. Again, there are tons of coping strategies out there, but they're particular techniques that help us deal with our mental and emotional challenges, right? And they can be broken up into cognitive, behavioral, and emotional. So let's talk about cognitive strategies, right? So the first one I like to talk about is positive self-talk, right? I'm a therapist, and I believe in talk therapy. I believe in talking to clients. That's what I do every day. But I also like to empower clients to let them know that you can talk to yourself. Positive self talk, right? And so if I'm in the recovery process and I'm trying to stay on my journey, I'm trying to manage my mental health, positive self-talk is very important. What am I telling myself about myself? What am I telling myself about the journey I'm on, right? Meaning, am I self-critical? Am I tearing myself apart? I'm so dumb. I can't do this. Life is hard. Life is hard for me. You know, no one has done it before, so I can't do it, right? It's just all this kind of negative dialogue that we tend to have inwardly. And so again, if I'm going to continue my recovery process and if I'm trying to manage my mental health as well in a healthy way, remember healthy coping skills, positive self-talk is very, very important. And I always tell people, come up with three things positive you can tell yourself every day. It doesn't have to be this long list, but start with three things, right? I'm good enough. I'm worthy. I can do it. Those simple three things that I can tell myself every day, all day, and meditate on those things until something in me starts to believe that. Okay. So again, positive self-talk is one of my favorite things. So I'm not gonna go down that I'm not gonna harp too much on that. But positive self-talk is important in recovery. Self-monitoring, right? Self-awareness, right? Knowing, okay, where am I in this recovery process? Am I aware of how I feel? Am I aware of kind of where I am when it comes to my mental health? Remember we talked about knowing where you are on that spectrum of mental health. Uh, Sometimes I meet clients that they are kind of in denial on some level, or they're just not aware. Like, oh, I'm fine. Like, hey, how have you been holding up? I know you lost your job. Oh, I'm fine. Or your parents lost their job. Oh, we're good. Just kind of no. If you're dealing with something, be self-aware about that, right? And that's part of the cognitive, meaning the way we think, the way we process thoughts, cognitive strategies. I want to be self-aware. I want to be self-monitoring my own mental health and where I am. That's important. Another cognitive strategy is mindfulness, right? Cognitive, again, meaning how I think, how I process, mindfulness. And so I know there's a lot of information out there about mindfulness. You can Google it, you can YouTube mindfulness, and there's tons of tapes and teachings on it. Some people do yoga, some people do meditation. So in mindfulness, it is all of that. But to break it down, mindfulness is about being aware of where I am mentally and emotionally and how I feel without judgment, right? And so again, if I'm talking about healthy coping skills, I want to practice mindfulness, knowing again, how do I feel? Where am I when it comes to this recovery process, right? And not judging that. And some people do it, and some people do it through meditation, right? Some people do take 15 minutes a day in the mornings to kind of center themselves. Some people use prayer, some people use music, some people use writing and journaling in those 15 minutes. However you choose to use it, but being mindful of how you feel, where you are, that helps when it comes to cognitive and kind of having some strategies, some healthy coping strategies. Uh, Setting and managing goals, right? That's part of cognitive strategies. Are you setting goals in your recovery process, right? What is your short-term goal and your long-term goal? Again, and that could be part of the reducing the use, right? The goal may be, you know what? I'm trying to reduce how much I watch porn, right? I'm trying to reduce how much I have a lot of sex, a lot of random sex. I know that I'm dependent on that, and I'm just trying to reduce that use, right? And so setting those type of goals. If the goal is abstinence, or I want to work on not smoking ever again. Okay, what does that goal look like, right? Are you still smoking now? Are you reducing the packs of cigarettes you smoke until you are abstinent? So again, setting and managing those goals are important when we talk about cognitive strategies. How I'm thinking about this, how I'm thought processing. You have to have some goals in mind, right? Behavioral strategies, setting boundaries. So this is very important uh, in recovery, just in life in general, setting boundaries is important. Excuse me. Setting boundaries is important. So if I'm in a recovery process, what do those boundaries look like? Meaning, I might can't hang out with the friends I used to hang out with, right? And I know that's easy to say because I'm 36, right? And so it's easy to say because I'm older, but I know it's hard when you're 19, 20, 21, 22, to set those type of boundaries where it's like, I know if I hang out with them, they're going to go drink. Like, my friends drink. That's what they do. Like, no judgment, they drink. I know that I get out of control with my drinking. And so my boundary may be, hey, I'm gonna start asking who's all over there. If I know this particular group of people are over there, I know they're gonna drink. Or like, hey, we can hang out anytime during the week, go get lunch, go get whatever, but I just can't hang out with you on Friday night. Cause I know y'all are gonna smoke weed and drink, and I'm trying not to do that, right? So just setting boundaries. Again, we're talking about behavioral, my behavior. And so if I'm trying to not engage, right, engage in a particular activity, I might I might need to set some healthy boundaries and say, hey, I can't hang out with this person. Or I know that I tend to watch porn at this particular time at this particular time of day. So I'm setting a boundary where I know around this time of day I'm gonna be outside of the house. I'm gonna be doing X, Y, Z, because that's my boundary. Uh, so again, setting boundaries, being aware of your triggers, right? The thing that triggers you, the thing that makes you want to use use nicotine. Again, if we're talking about behavioral strategies and how to not engage in something, okay, I need to know what makes me want to engage, right? And that goes back to being self-aware, back to the cognitive, right? What are my triggers? If I'm trying to control my behavior and control my engagement, I need to know this thing, this person. So let's talk about that real quick. Sometimes people are triggered, right? And sometimes those triggers may be people that we necessarily can't get away from. Let's say that, right? So, because again, I'm talking to college students, uh, that may be listening. So, if that trigger is a particular sibling, if that trigger is a person, right? Again, I might can't eliminate the trigger because pay attention to what I said, to be aware of the trigger. I didn't say you had to eliminate it. Now there are some triggers that you can eliminate, right? Like, hey, I know going to this particular club is a trigger. Okay, I'm not gonna go to that club. Okay, I might can eliminate that, but I can eliminate my parents. If my parents are a trigger, I just need to be aware of my trigger and learn how to manage it, right? Some triggers can't be eliminated. My parents are my parents. Their personality may be the personality of my parents may be a trigger. So I can't change my parents' personality, but I can manage my triggers. So I can't manage it if I'm not aware of it, right? So being aware of your triggers is important. And of course, reducing use. We talked about that earlier. If I'm talking about behavioral strategies, behavioral coping skills, again, abstinence for everyone isn't the ultimate goal, right? So, for instance, we know sex is a part of human nature. For many people, I know some people don't choose to have sex, but for many individuals, sex is part of our human experience. So being abstinent forever for a lot of people, right? It's not realistic. So that again, that's where the reducing use comes in. Because if sex or porn, again, from me, there's no judgment. If you watch porn, I would never tell somebody is right or wrong. But if you realize, okay, I have a porn addiction, or I'm dependent on porn, so at that point, I need to maybe reduce my use. Uh, I know I'm dependent on sex. I'm dependent on this. I need to reduce my maybe my use or reduce my sex partners. So again, that's where the reduce comes in. Okay, if I'm trying not to engage so much in a particular activity, I may need to start off with reducing, and that's even when it comes to chemical dependency, right? Again, I may not be cold turkey on smoking cigarettes, but I want to work on reducing how much I smoke. Uh, and that's okay, right? That's okay. Emotional strategies, right? We're talking about coping skills, emotional coping skills, or strategies, self-help materials, right? I'm all about podcasts. Of course, if you are a UTD student, because I know this will be on our YouTube page, so it may, this other people outside of UTD may be listening. But if you are a UTD student or in the UT system, we have an app called Thrive, right? So if you have iPhone, Apple, you have Android, you can get that app for free. So again, that's self help. It has all type of material on that app about mental health, how to cope, how to manage your anxiety. So again, self help material. I'm trying to work on some coping skills to deal with my mental health, my emotional health. So I believe in self help. I believe clearly in therapy, but I know your therapist can't live with you 24/7. So there has to be some self help stuff that you engage in outside of the therapy room if you are doing therapy. So again, podcasts, Thrive at UT app. Of course, we talk about TAL. Again, if you are a student at UTD, you can definitely get TAL. And all this stuff you can get again. It's free because you are a student. Online videos. Again, YouTube is a great resource. If you type in coping skills on YouTube, a lot of times there's a tons of thousands of videos that can help you with that. Or if you type in self-compassion or whatever, tons of material on YouTube about self-compassion. So again, self-help material, journaling. I know a lot of people like, I don't want to journal. That seems whack or that seems corny. But writing down your emotions, writing down your day, that can give you an outlet, right? Some people will tell me I don't have support or I don't have anyone that I feel like I can trust, right? And I'm trying to stay in this recovery process. I'm trying to manage my mental health, but I don't have anyone to talk to. Okay, journaling is a good way to manage my emotions in a healthy way because it provides an outlet, and it kind of lets me vent, right, in a way that maybe talking to someone doesn't allow. Again, emotional strategies include psychotherapy, right? Hey, therapy. I'm always going to promote that, and of course, psychiatry, right? If a person feels like, hey, I'm dealing with my recovery, but I'm dealing with some mental health stuff, and I think I might need medication to kind of manage some of this mental health challenges. Clearly, we promote psychiatry if you feel like you need that. That's definitely important. And then self compassion, like that's one of my biggest things as a therapist is self compassion. Being in recovery is challenging and difficult, right? If I've been smoking marijuana for 5 years, it's difficult to stop because my not only am I'm used to it behavioral, right? It's my behavior. I'm used to it. It's something I do. But physically, medically, a lot of times your body's kind of used to that chemical, right? And so it's a difficult process, right? And so you have to have self compassion. And many people don't really know how to engage in self compassion, right? It's very hard. I hear it all the time with students. It's like they can give compassion to other people, but it's really hard for them to engage in it themselves. But you have to you have to give yourself some grace. You're not perfect, and look. That's another PowerPoint for another day. Perfectionism. You're not perfect, so getting this process or engaging in this recovery process is not a perfect process, right? You might say, hey, I'm going to be abstinent. I'm going to not smoke another cigarette, and you might do it for 3 weeks, and bam, you kind of give into that urge, and you might smoke a cigarette. Listen, don't beat yourself up. Have compassion. Again, recovery is a process. You know what? I'm not gonna drink no more, or I'm not gonna watch porn anymore. But then I have an urge to do so, and I fall back into that habit. Listen, self-compassion is what you need to get through the process, to get, whatever your goal is. Self-compassion. Without that, your process is going to be very, very, it's already difficult, at times anyway, but it's going to be almost like you're making it really hard on yourself if you don't engage in self-compassion and showing yourself grace and showing yourself some mercy. Okay. Next slide. So support. And so I know we have like 15 minutes left, so I'm almost toward the end of my PowerPoint. But support, listen, support during recovery is a vital part of the process. And I know many people want to be an island to themselves, and many people want to do it themselves. And listen, there's nothing wrong with being independent, but we all need support on some level. We all need support. I don't care if you're again. I don't care what the process is. Whether I'm starting my own business, that's a process. I'm trying to get my master's degree. That's a process. Whatever the process is, you're going to need some support on some level, and that's no different when it comes to recovery, right? Support is a vital part of that process. uh, COVID-19, right, this whole pandemic has presented some challenges for individuals who are getting support from friends, the community, and the university, right? If before COVID, if you were going to any type of Alcoholic Anonymous, if you're going to any type of narcotic, Narcotics Anonymous, any type of like support group in the community, clearly some of that has been shut down because of COVID, because of trying to keep people safe. So and then other times I've heard people say, my friends were my support, but they're dealing with stuff too, right? So it's like, hey, COVID-19 has impacted all of us, no matter how much money we make, no matter where we live, on some level it has impacted us. So a lot of times people feel like I had support in my friends, but they're dealing with their own stuff, and so I really don't have that support no more. And then of course the university, right? Listen, I was getting my support because I had all these groups all these people I could hang out with on campus. I went to these particular support groups on campus, but of course campus is closed and everything is virtual. It may not feel the same for some people. So again, I know COVID-19 has presented some challenges when it comes to individuals getting support. But when we talk about getting support, I always urge people connect with friends and family that you trust. Right? It's like, listen, I'm not saying you have to tell your deep darkest secrets to people, uh, but if you have a friend or particular friends or family that you do trust, connect with them on some level and let them know, like, hey, if you trust them, I'm in recovery and I need some accountability and support, right? I have chosen to be abstinent from smoking cigarettes. And so if you see me with a pack of cigarettes, I need you to help me be accountable. Or if I'm having a hard time and I want to start drinking again, I want to be able to call you and say, hey, I felt like drinking. I need to talk about it. Or I said I wasn't going to drink again, and I did drink, and I just need some help, not feeling guilty about it, right? So connect with those friends and family that you do trust. Of course, at the University of Texas at Dallas, we do have the Center for Students in Recovery, right? Or we call it the CSR. So connect with them. I know again their office, like our office, is doing everything virtual, and so don't worry, I'm going to give contact information later. But connect with the Center for Students in Recovery. They have a great program. They have great people there to support you. And again, since you're on campus, excuse me, even if you're off campus and you're doing everything virtual, like your virtual classes, as long as you're a student, you still can connect with them, and so let them be your support. And of course, the counseling center, right? I was going to plug us in. We're there to support you in your mental health, right? So listen, recovery is difficult. Uh, Managing mental health in recovery with the pandemic is difficult. And so if you feel like you need some additional support when it comes to therapy, connect with us, right? Connect to our website online. We have a lot of groups coming up for the fall, right? The fall semester is going to start in a few weeks, so we have a lot of interesting groups for students. We have a lot of workshops coming up. We have psychiatry. We have psychotherapy. So we have a lot of things to help students manage their mental health and grow. So connect with us. Remember, mental health is a spectrum. Don't be ashamed. Don't be part. Don't get stuck in this stigma where you can't reach out to the CSR on campus, where you can't reach out to the counseling center. There's nothing wrong with getting that support. That's what we're here for. And again, we talked about SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And I wanted to put this because they have a hotline that's for resources and referrals, and they can help you get connected to the community no matter where you are. Because I know a lot of people aren't coming back to Dallas, right? If your classes are virtual, and you're going to stay at home, whether at home is Houston, whether you're in California, whether you live in Arkansas, I don't know, and you're not coming back physically to Dallas and to the community in Dallas, and you feel like, hey, I need some extra support in my city where I'm at, you definitely can call that hotline and say, hey, I'm looking for resources. I live in Houston, Texas, and I'm looking for maybe a community meeting, or I'm looking for treatment. Maybe I need to go to rehab. Maybe I need to go to rehabilitation and go to a program to kind of help with my recovery process. And you just don't know where to start, right? So call that hotline and let them know, and they can kind of assist you with that. All right. So again, get the support you need. If you don't, no one knows you're going through a difficult time if you don't say something, right? And so connect. If you can't connect with friends or family, please connect with the CSR, connect with the counseling center. That's what we're here for. Okay. Next slide, please. Of course, so just some contact information. UTD Student Counseling Center, clearly. Have the phone number up there that we have, and of course, our email. And so if you want some services or questions about services, you can always email that email, counseling center at utdallas.edu. And of course, we always have to say, if you're ever in a crisis, and again, crisis meaning I'm thinking about, suicide. I'm thinking about homicide, hurting someone. I'm thinking about self injury and cutting or burning myself. Please call the crisis line at 972 UTD Talk. It's 24 hours for our students. So we definitely want you to connect if you ever feel like you're in crisis. Please call that number. Again, the Center for Students in Recovery, the phone number is right here. Of course, if you don't jot the phone number down, you can definitely go to the website and the UTD website and look at their homepage. Definitely email recovery@utddallas.edu if you feel like you have questions about any of the services they provide when it comes to recovery and kind of managing that recovery process. Definitely email them and visit their website. I didn't see any questions. I'm gonna make sure. Yeah, I didn't see any questions in the box, and so I'm assuming there isn't any questions, which is fine. But I do want to thank you for watching this presentation. I do want to thank Stacy, my colleague who put this together. She's our workshop coordinator. So I do want to thank her for putting this together and putting this on YouTube for people to watch and can kind of get some education and some support. So again, thank you. And again, if you need anything, please reach out to the Student Counseling Center. My name is Markelse. It has been my pleasure, and have a good day.